This is America at Night with McGraw-Millhaven.
Every Thursday, we check in with our travel correspondent. Of course, it's Bill Cleveland, and his website is BillOnTheRoad.com. Bill Cleveland, welcome back, my friend.
Hey, good to be with you. How's it going?
One postscript from last week's pickleball conversation. Last night, I was happened to be watching ESPN, and they had Andre Agassi playing a doubles pickleball tournament. It was him and another guy. I think it was Jeff Blake, former tennis guy. Andre Agassi was playing two women in a pickleball match. Do men play against women, and do women play against men?
In doubles, but sometimes in recreation, you'll have two women. In fact, I tell you what, last week I played just for fun, and I played against two women who just kicked my butt up and down the court. They were former tennis players, and they were very, very talented. So yes, it does happen.
All right, good to know. All right,
did
Bill
Cleveland.
Did
you fall asleep while you were watching it on TV?
No, I did not fall asleep. I fell asleep watching the Masters on Sunday, but I didn't fall asleep watching pickleball. No, I was watching Andre run around as an old man. It was actually kind of enjoyable. It was actually kind of fun, actually, to be honest with you. All right.
Cool.
This week, we're talking LBJ's Ranch. What do we know?
Yeah, this was kind of at top of mind today because, as you know, and your listeners probably think I only have one hobby and one interest, and that is presidential sites. But, just something I got these new books out and just pretty excited about it. And I had the folks at the LBJ Library in Austin just ordered some copies of it. And right about the time you texted me and asked tonight what we were going to talk about. So I thought, what the heck? Let's talk about the LBJ Ranch now this is in, not in Austin. The LBJ Presidential Library is in Austin, but where he lived is about an hour away, maybe an hour and a half, in Stonewall, Texas. And this ranch that he had was pretty much a part of his life for most of his life. It was owned by, I think it was his uncle, and then he ended up purchasing it and then adding to it and wound up with like 2,700 acres and spent a lot of time there, even as president, and they would call it the Texas White House. And he loved going down there, and there's so many great stories about this ranch. And it was a place that I always wanted to see, and finally had the opportunity to go down and visit. And so folks can actually tour the ranch. What's really neat is you just drive your car onto the property, and you basically do essentially a self-guided tour of the ranch. You kind of follow the signs, but you're driving around his ranch, and you see it's still a working ranch. They still have animals and everything. And then when you're finished, you wind up, you basically pull into this little parking lot, and it's right there at his house. You're right there at President Johnson's home, and it's pretty neat. It's pretty neat to see that in person.
All right, now hold on a second. Back up a second. Let's talk about this book, because you have, we all know about your presidential books, but you have a new children's book out that we can now buy at the gift shop at the LBJ Ranch.
So you can't buy the children's book there yet. That's just on Amazon at the moment. But yeah, you can get the Presidential Road Trips book, which is basically a guide for folks who want to go to all the presidential sites around the country. But yeah, I have this cool children's book that just came out, and I do these events, two of them this week, where I go and I speak at museums and libraries and to groups and things like that, all about presidential history and all the cool stuff that I learned while I was putting this book together. And I have this it's a pretty short, like maybe 3-minute segment that I do, and it's just for fun. And it's these little quirky, funny presidential fun facts. You've probably have seen some of them over the years. And as I had I'd watch this video segment play over and over at these events, I started thinking, what, this would actually be a really fun children's book. And so what I did was I put it together. There's about 25 or 30 of these just kind of fun presidential fun facts, and then of course there's some really cute illustrations that go along with them. But I thought, what an interesting way to get kids to learn about presidents that maybe they probably would never hear about otherwise. And, it's not political. It's not like heavy history. It's just funny stuff and making them seem relatable. And so, yeah, it just came out this week. It's called Funny Presidents, and folks can find it on Amazon right now.
All right, beautiful. All right, good to know. Okay, now back to the LBJ Ranch. So when you say a self-guided tour, how do you know what you're looking at if you're just in a car by yourself driving around these 200 acres?
Well, it's 2,700 acres, but you don't do, you're not, no, you're not driving the entire ranch. They have it all organized, so you're following, you're following the road, and there are some audio guides that you can download and listen to. But essentially, for the ranch part of it, you're just kind of looking at animals and just seeing kind of the layout of the land. The real tour, the real experience happens once you're finished driving around. You park your car there by the home, and you can tour the home. They're doing a little bit of renovation right at the moment, so it might be closed for just a little while. But you walk through the house, you see the way. I mean, the house itself is really amazing. Like this guy, he had, for example, telephones all over the house, man. I mean, this guy did not want to walk 10 feet and not have a phone ready to call or talk to somebody. He probably had a cord that, went out onto the ranch so he could have, important conversations while he was counting cattle. I mean, it was crazy the amount of phones. My favorite part of the experience, McGraw, is and you and I both worked in radio a long time. I assume you've worked at a radio station that had a prize closet. You know what I'm talking about?
Sure.
Where all the goodies are, the giveaway stuff. Well, Johnson loved giving things away that had his emblem, his signature, and the White House logo on it. And you go into this room, and it is just, I mean, from floor to ceiling, boxes and boxes and boxes. And they show what's in the boxes. They have little displays. And you cannot even believe the amount of stuff that this guy slapped his name on. Hats and Zippo lighters and pens and pencils and coins. I mean, it's crazy. But the best one, and I talk about this in my presentation that I do, it was an electric toothbrush set that he would give away. And the quote that I was able to dig up from Johnson about this electric tooth, and I mean, it's a big thing. I mean, it's got 4 different brushes, and you got to plug it in. It's crazy. And somebody said, Mr. President, why on earth would you be giving away an electric toothbrush set? And Johnson said, because I want people to think of me when they wake up in the morning and again when they go to bed at night. Oh my God. But so yeah, all this junk, and it's just wild to see it. And but the stories about the ranch and Johnson, I mean, this has to be one of the quirkiest presidents of all time. And my favorite story about the ranch itself, and I believe they have this car on display. I don't remember where they had it, but I think they have it down there. Johnson owned one of these vehicles. I think they're called an amphicar. So it's a car that goes on land and on water.
Okay.
And Johnson would he loved doing this gag where, and you would have dignitaries and press people and folks who would visit him at the ranch. And they'd get into this car and they'd drive around, probably, touring the ranch a little bit. And there'd always be a Secret Service agent with him in the car. And Johnson would say to the Secret Service agent, as the guest is sitting in the back seat, "Hey, have we had a chance to have the brakes fixed on the car?" And the Secret Service agent playing along would say, "No, Mr. President, we haven't had a chance to look at the brakes." And as this conversation is unfolding, Johnson is flying toward a lake on the property, and the car would go into the water, and people would freak out. There was one woman who was a reporter who actually ended up going to the hospital because she tried to jump out of the car as it was going into the water, not knowing that, obviously the car could float. And but tons of quirky stories about this guy. The ranch, he loved it. They call it the Texas White House. He did, a lot of. He talked to world leaders down there. Journalists would go down and hang out on the ranch with him. Pretty interesting place.
So his wife, or he owned a lot of radio stations, did they not at one point? I think his wife owned a lot of radio stations.
Lady Bird Johnson?
Yeah.
To be honest, I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know if he owned radio stations.
Yeah, and I think
me.
after she died, I think they sold the radio stations. I think I remember running into a couple people who had worked at a couple of radio stations they had owned. But did you go visit his presidential library in Austin at all?
I did. I've been to the presidential library. The thing that's most striking when you walk into the building are so all of his presidential papers are there, just like all of the presidential libraries, or most of them, and they have them displayed in red binders, and they're all on display. I mean, it has to be several thousand of these binders that are on display, big size binders. And they're all behind glass, and you're walking up a staircase as you're looking at this big glass panel and all of these red binders with his papers in them. And it is really a cool sight. But lots of really interesting things on display in that library. You have, for example, the desk that was used to when he signed the Civil Rights Act. They have that desk there. One of the things I thought was interesting, they have the very first Medicare card on display, which was given to Harry Truman. So Harry Truman, it was his idea for Medicare. And so they have his Medicare card on display. But I love presidential libraries because they all have cool little, just stuff like that you're not going to find anywhere else.
I went to the Johnson Library, and I was blown away at how real it was. The things he touched, the things that are in existence because he was president. But one of the things that I thought was, they didn't sugarcoat Vietnam at all. And when I was there, you can look at the letters that were written by grieving mothers whose sons had died in Vietnam. And these letters talk about heartbreaking. And you think, oh, my goodness, the president of the United States read these letters from these mothers whose children have died in Vietnam. How he could get up in the morning, being condemned to hell for killing, Mrs. Smith's sweet boy. It was just, heartbreakingly riveting to see. And they didn't sugarcoat it at all. They told the whole story, soup to nuts.
Yeah, and it's all of the libraries do a pretty good job of that. Somebody just asked me at an event yesterday if the Nixon Presidential Library, covered up Watergate or sugarcoated. I said, nope, they do the same thing. It's, they present both sides, and if there's no trying to pretend certain things didn't happen or make it, better than it was or whatever. But yeah, the Johnson Library is awesome. They have, letters. They had letters. You probably saw this, like from Jackie Kennedy. Of course, he became president after JFK's assassination. They had, I think, the Bible that he was sworn in on Air Force One after Kennedy's assassination. I mean, and you list, regardless of your politics, whether you like him or like any of the stuff that he signed, it is amazing. When you look at a panel of all of the legislation that went through during his term in office, it's unbelievable. And so, yeah, it's definitely worth a visit.
Yeah, no, I would highly recommend. And you're right. You sit there and, I like to think I know a little bit about the Johnson administration, but you just, they sell like Cookie Monster keychains in the gift shop. And I was like, what are they selling Cookie Monster? Because he signed the legislation for PBS to come into existence. I mean, it's just things like that.
I think my books are actually going to be right next to the Cookie Monster keychains, if I'm not mistaken. That's where I asked them to be placed, right next to the Cookie Monster keychains. No, you're right. It is amazing the amount of stuff that happened during that term in office. They even have, and again, I like kind of just quirky stuff. They have the teleprompter paper that was in the teleprompter when he had his Oval Office speech saying he was not going to run for re-election. I mean, that's why I love these places, because they save all this stuff and things that we forget about or wouldn't even think existed, and it's just so cool to see it in person.
Yeah. All right. Bill Cleveland at the LBJ Ranch and the LBJ Library. Also, Presidential Road Trips. That's the book. And the newest kids book is where? Where can we get that? On Amazon?
Yeah, it just went up on Amazon, I think yesterday. So yeah, it's called Funny Presidents, and you can find it there. Just Bill Cleveland, Funny Presidents, and yeah, if you got kids, you got grandkids, it's kind of a cool way to introduce your kids to presidential history without boring them, quite frankly.
Yeah, no, and if you go on your website, BillOnTheRoad.com, looks like you're busy all summer long with book tour all around the country. So if you're curious to find out if Bill's in your neck of the woods, just go to BillOnTheRoad.com, huh?
Yeah, in fact, I just got invited to do an event at the Carter Presidential Library this fall, too. So I'll be bouncing around at all these presidential sites for the rest of the year. It's pretty fun.
That's Bill Cleveland, BillOnTheRoad.com. When was the last time you played pickleball?
Last week.
All right. All right, good. All right.
I'm going to get you out on the court one of these times. I'm going to teach you how to play.
No, my sciatica nerve is acting up. I don't think that's going to
Always an excuse. Always an excuse. It's all good.
Bill, have yourself a good trip. Be safe on the road, and we'll talk to you next week.
All right. Sounds good. See you.
Bill on the Road. BillOnTheRoad.com. America at Night. Back in a moment.
Want to know what's coming up on America at Night?